All right, so get this. We're diving deep into neo-pagan Druidism,
Oh, yeah.
but with a twist today.
Sounds intriguing.
You ready for this?
I'm all ears.
Okay, so we've got these two sources that are like total opposites.
Okay, lay it on me.
So we have a super detailed script for an Imbolc ritual,
Interesting.
and then a personal memoir draft that touches on some really intense spiritual exploration.
So we're talking like a structured ceremony versus someone's like raw personal journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's a fascinating contrast.
And that's what got me thinking, like, can we actually learn something about how spiritual practice works by looking at these two side by side?
You mean like for modern day druids specifically, or just...
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking specifically about modern-day Druids, but I think there might be some broader takeaways, too.
I think you're right. There's always something to be learned from looking at different approaches to spirituality.
Okay, so let's start with this Imbolc ritual script. It's
Right.
called 2025 Grove of the Oaks Imbolc.
Catchy title.
Right.
I like it.
And honestly, I was blown away by how much symbolism they packed into every little detail.
Give me an example.
Okay, so they start by lighting the hearth fire.
Okay, makes sense.
But it's not just like striking a match. They actually chant these words.
Oh, wow.
I kindle this flame for the hearth, for the home, for the whole of the people. One flame for light, one flame for warmth, one flame to encircle us all.
There's something really primal about fire, isn't there?
Totally.
It represents warmth, community, even purification.
Yeah, and you can see how in this ritual they're intentionally like imbuing that simple act of lighting a fire with all this deeper meaning.
Yeah, it's like they're transforming the mundane into something sacred.
Exactly. And then they go on to create this sacred space called a nematon.
A nematon.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I have. It's essentially a sacred grove or enclosure in Celtic tradition.
Oh, interesting. So they're like recreating that ancient concept in their modern ritual.
It seems that way.
And the way they do it is really cool. They literally walk around the perimeter with a torch chanting these words. By our will, by our words, by our work, this place is made whole and holy.
Wow, it's like they're drawing a line in the sand between the everyday world and the sacred realm they're creating.
Yeah, it's like a symbolic act of setting the space apart.
It's fascinating how they're using both physical actions and spoken words to create this energetic boundary.
Totally. And then they invoke Bridget.
Bridget, central figure in Celtic mythology.
Yeah, she's this Celtic goddess associated with all sorts of things like inspiration, hearth crafts, even poetry.
Yeah, she's a multifaceted goddess with a rich history.
And she seems to be a pretty big deal in this tradition.
Oh, absolutely. Bridget is especially important at Imbolc, which is all about the transition from winter to spring.
Right. So it makes sense that they would call upon her during this time of year.
Her energy aligns perfectly with the themes of renewal and rebirth associated with Imbolc.
Okay, that's making more sense now.
It's all about aligning with those powerful archetypal energies.
Okay, so then they move into these offerings made to different spiritual entities.
Okay.
And they start with the source of all. Then they move on to land spirits, ancestors, nature spirits, and even these shining ones, which I'm assuming are like gods and goddesses.
You got it. The Shining Ones is a common term used to refer to deities in many pagan traditions.
Okay, so they're acknowledging all these different levels of existence.
And what's really cool is that the offerings themselves are super specific and symbolic.
Give me an example.
They offer juniper berries for peace, birdseed for nature spirits, things like that.
Oh, wow. It's like they're giving gifts that are meaningful to each recipient.
Exactly. It's a way of showing respect and building relationships with these unseen forces.
And it reminds me of how people leave offerings at shrines or temples in other traditions.
Absolutely. It's a universal human impulse to connect with the divine through offerings.
Yeah, it's like a way of acknowledging that we're not alone in this world, that there are all these other forces out there.
And that we're part of a larger web of existence, a grand interconnectedness.
Okay, so after the offerings, they go on to list these 9 blessings of Bridget, which are all about invoking positive energy for the coming year.
Sounds like they're setting intentions for growth and abundance.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this really interesting part called Bridget's Mantle.
Bridget's mantle. That sounds intriguing.
They describe it as a protective charm and a declaration of faith.
Oh, wow. So it's like a way of invoking Bridget's protection and guidance.
Yeah, and it's this whole long recitation. It's pretty intense.
Well, think about it. Even in modern psychology, we see the power of affirmations and positive self-talk.
Right.
So even though this is an ancient ritual, it speaks to some very basic human needs for security and well-being.
So you're saying that chanting something like Bridget's Mantle could actually have a real psychological effect?
It's certainly possible. If you're constantly reciting affirmations of protection and strength, it can shift your mindset, boost your confidence, and even influence your behavior in subtle ways.
That's wild. I never thought about it like that before.
The mind is a powerful thing, and rituals can be powerful tools for shaping our inner landscape.
Okay, so we have this highly structured ritual with all these specific elements and symbolism.
Yeah.
But then we have the author's memoir, which is so different.
Ow.
It's incredibly personal and anecdotal.
I'm curious to see how these two sources will play off of each other.
Me too. It's like they're coming from completely different worlds, but somehow I think we'll find some surprising connections.
I agree. I think we're in for a fascinating deep dive.
Okay, so tell me about this memoir. What kinds of experiences does the author describe that hint at this connection to the numinous?
Well, he doesn't seem to be doing any formal rituals like in the Imbolc script.
Right.
But there are these really vivid passages about growing up in nature, feeling this deep connection to the land, and searching for meaning.
Okay. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have those moments where they feel drawn to something bigger than themselves.
Absolutely. And the author describes those moments with such clarity and honesty. It's really compelling.
So what are some specific examples? Like what kinds of experiences does he talk about?
Well, there are these beautiful descriptions of learning to canoe, hiking in the mountains, even playing role-playing games with friends.
Wait, role-playing games?
Yeah, it might seem unexpected, but
That's so
he
sick.
finds these moments of awe and wonder even in those seemingly ordinary activities.
It's like he's finding the sacred in the everyday.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all relate to, right?
Totally.
Those moments where you're suddenly struck by the beauty of a sunset or the power of a thunderstorm or even just the sheer miracle of being alive.
Yeah, those moments are so powerful.
Those are all encounters with the numinous, even if we don't always recognize them as such.
I love that. It's like he's not seeking out these grand spiritual experiences. He's just paying attention to the magic that's already present in his life.
And that's a powerful lesson in itself. The sacred is all around us if we just open our eyes and our hearts to see it.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. And I think that's one of the things that draws me to Druidism, this idea that the spiritual isn't separate from the natural world. It's woven into the very fabric of our existence.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing the sacredness inherent in the world around us, in the trees, the rivers, the animals, even in the very air we breathe.
And that brings us to another fascinating concept that emerges from both sources.
Oh, and what's that?
Cosmicism.
Ah, yes, cosmicism. Remember that philosophical idea that the universe is vast and indifferent to human concerns?
Remind me again what that means. It's been a while since I looked at that source.
Essentially, it's this idea that we're just a tiny speck in a vast and uncaring cosmos.
Okay, yeah, I remember now. And honestly, that can be a pretty unsettling thought.
It can be, for sure. It definitely makes you feel a little small, like all our human dramas and aspirations are kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
Right.
But I'm curious how this concept fits into a nature-based spirituality like Druidism.
Well, it might seem counterintuitive, but I think cosmicism can actually enhance our appreciation for life and our connection to the Earth.
How so?
Think about it. If the universe truly is indifferent to our existence, it makes our little planet, our home, seem even more precious, even more miraculous.
Okay, I'm starting to see your point. It's like if we're just a tiny speck in this vast cosmic ocean, then this little blue planet becomes even more special.
Precisely. It's like looking at a single grain of sand and realizing it's part of a vast, intricate beach. Suddenly, that one grain of sand takes on a whole new level of significance.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this structured Imbolc ritual, which is all about connecting with specific deities and spirits, and then we have the author's personal experiences, which are much more about finding the numinous in everyday life,
Yeah.
even in the face of this vast and different cosmos.
And that's what makes these two sources so fascinating to consider together, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
On the surface, they seem completely different, but I think if we dig a little deeper, we'll start to see some surprising connections.
I'm ready to dig.
Let's do it. So, one thing that really struck me about that Imbolc ritual,
Right.
it's how much emphasis they put on creating and protecting that sacred space.
The Nematon.
Yeah, the nematon.
Right.
Like, remember how they walk around it 3 times with the torch chanting? It seems like they're not just marking out a physical space, but like creating an energetic boundary too.
Right. It's like they're stepping out of the ordinary world into this totally different reality. And you know what I was wondering about?
What's that?
What's with all the threes?
The 3s.
Yeah. Like they walk around 3 times, they ring a bell 3 times 3.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just a coincidence, or is there something deeper going on there?
You've picked up on something really important. The number 3 pops up all over the place in spiritual traditions, especially in Celtic ones.
Really?
Yeah. It often represents balance, like the mind, body, and spirit all working together.
Hmm.
So I think in this ritual, they're using the repetition of 3 to create a sense of wholeness and harmony within that sacred space.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like they're saying, okay, all the distractions of the outside world, all the anxieties and worries, we're leaving those behind. We're stepping into this space of pure intention and connection.
Exactly. And remember how they call on these powers like the Shining Ones, the ancestors, the spirits of the land to guard this space and make sure only peaceful energy can enter?
Yeah, that protection thing is huge.
It is. And it's not just about physical protection either. It's about invoking protection on all levels, like physical, emotional, and spiritual.
It's like they're creating a safe container for some serious inner work.
Exactly. They're setting the stage for a powerful experience, and they're taking precautions to make sure the energy stays positive and aligned with their intentions.
Okay, I'm with you. So we've talked about the sacred space. Now let's talk about those offerings. We touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm super curious about the specific choices they make and what those choices tell us about their relationship to the unseen world.
Yeah, well, you've got the classics like water and compost offered to the land, which is
Mhm.
such a beautiful way to acknowledge Earth as the source of life.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, we recognize you, we honor you, and we want to give back to you.
And then there's that cider offered to the ancestors and left on the ground. Such a simple gesture, but it feels so profound.
It really does. It speaks to that sense of continuity, honoring our roots, and recognizing that we're part of a story that unfolds across generations.
Right. It's like they're sharing a meal with those who came before them, keeping that connection alive.
Exactly. And, a lot of modern spiritual seekers are yearning for that sense of belonging, that connection to something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And this ritual offers a really tangible way to tap into that.
I was also really curious about the hazelnuts offered to the said king.
Oh, yeah, the hazelnuts.
What's the deal with hazelnuts?
Well, in Celtic lore, hazel trees are associated with wisdom and inspiration.
Oh, interesting.
The hazelnuts themselves are sometimes seen as containing the knowledge of the other world, that mysterious realm where the Side reside.
Whoa, okay. So offering hazelnuts to the said king is like asking for guidance for a glimpse into those deeper mysteries.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, we're open to receiving your wisdom, your inspiration, your connection to the other world.
That's so cool. It's like a symbolic exchange of energy.
It is.
But it also makes me think about the author of the memoir. He doesn't seem to be making any formal offerings.
Yeah.
But are there ways in which he's offering something of himself in this search for the numinous?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember, he talks about offering his gratitude and attention to the forces he encounters.
Right.
In a way, he's offering his vulnerability, his willingness to be transformed by these experiences.
That's a really interesting perspective.
There's that passage where he talks about learning to canoe and feeling this overwhelming sense of awe at the power of the river. He's literally offering his fear and clumsiness to the water, surrendering to something larger than himself.
That's beautiful. It's like offering doesn't always have to be about physical objects.
Exactly.
Maybe it's about offering our presence, our openness, our willingness to be changed by the encounters we have.
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective from transaction to relationship. We're not just trying to appease the spirits or get something from them.
We're acknowledging our interconnectedness, our willingness to participate in this back and forth of giving and receiving.
Exactly.
Okay, so offerings can take many forms. What about chanting? It seems to play a big role in the Imbolc ritual.
Yeah, it does.
What do you make of those chants, those repeated phrases that seem to like weave a kind of magic into the space?
Well, chanting is a powerful tool. It's used in spiritual practices across cultures.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
It can be seen as a way to focus the mind, to shift our energy, and to connect with the deeper rhythms of the universe.
Right. It's like creating a vibration that resonates with something beyond ourselves.
Exactly. And in the Imbolc ritual, they chant, by our will, by our words, by our work, this place is made whole and holy.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the power of human intention to create change both within ourselves and in the world around us.
I'm picking up on this theme of active participation, of like co-creation with the divine. It's not just about passively receiving blessings, but about stepping into our power as creators, using our will and our actions to shape our reality.
Yeah, that's a powerful insight.
And that actually resonates with something I noticed in the memoir.
Oh, really? What's that?
Well, the author talks about his love of role-playing games and how those games allowed him to explore different identities and possibilities.
Okay.
And even though it was a form of play, there was this real element of self-discovery and spiritual exploration happening within those imagined worlds.
That's fascinating. It's almost like he was practicing shaping his own reality, exploring the power of his will and imagination to create something new and meaningful.
Exactly. And, that's something we can all do, whether we're playing a game, writing a story, or just choosing how we want to show up in the world each day.
Right. We all have that creative power within us, and spiritual practice can be a way to tap into that power and use it to align ourselves with our highest aspirations.
Totally. It's not just about connecting with something outside ourselves, but also about cultivating the divine spark within.
You've just articulated one of the core principles of Druidism, that the spiritual and the natural are deeply intertwined. We find the divine in the natural world, and we also cultivate the divine within ourselves.
And that brings us to another fascinating concept that emerges from both sources.
Oh, and what's that?
The other world.
Ah, yes, the other world.
It sounds so mystical and intriguing. I know in the Imbolc ritual, they invoke the Side King to maintain a passage between this world and the other worlds.
Right.
But what exactly is the other world? Is it a physical place, a state of mind, or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question. In Celtic spirituality, the otherworld is often described as a realm that exists alongside our own, a place where the spirits of the land, the ancestors, and the Shining Ones reside.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily a physical place you could travel to in a spaceship.
Right.
It's more like a different state of consciousness, a way of perceiving the world that's attuned to these unseen forces that shape our reality.
So it's not like heaven or hell.
No.
It's more like a different dimension of existence, a way of seeing and experiencing the world that's normally hidden from view.
Exactly. And, there are a lot of parallels in other spiritual traditions.
Like what?
Think about altered states of consciousness, lucid dreaming, even the flow state that athletes and artists talk about.
Right.
These are all experiences where we step outside our ordinary perception and tap into something deeper, something more expansive.
That makes sense. It's like
Okay.
we're accessing a different level of reality.
It is.
It makes me wonder if the author of the memoir ever consciously seeks out those kinds of experiences, those glimpses into the other world. Does he ever talk about trying to connect with that realm?
There are definitely moments where he seems to be on the edge of something, like he's brushing up against that veil between the worlds. Remember the section where he describes hiking in the mountains and feeling this sudden shift in the atmosphere?
Yeah, he talks about feeling like he's being watched,
Yeah.
like there's a presence just beyond his perception.
Mhm.
It's kind of spooky, but also exciting, like he's stepping into the unknown.
Exactly. And that feeling of being on the threshold of sensing something just out of reach, that's classic otherworld material. It's that liminal space where the laws of nature seem to bend and shift and anything feels possible.
It makes me think about those weird synchronicities that happen in life sometimes. Like when you're thinking about someone and then they call, or you randomly stumble across the perfect book at the exact moment you need it. Those moments always feel a little magical, like there's some unseen force orchestrating events behind the scenes.
It's like we're catching a glimpse of the web of interconnectedness, those invisible threads that weave together all of existence. And maybe the other world is just another way of describing that interconnectedness, that sense that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked about the sacred space, the offerings, the chanting, and the other world. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to unpack. The Seed.
The seed.
Remember how they invoke the Sade King in the Imbolc ritual, asking for protection and guidance?
Yeah.
Who are these Seed? What role do they play in Druidism?
Well, the Seed, also known as the Fae or fairies, are a fascinating and complex part of Celtic mythology. They're often depicted as nature spirits dwelling in forests, hills, and sacred wells.
Okay.
But they're not just cute little pixies flitting about with wings. They're powerful beings, and they're said to be guardians of the land, protectors of nature's secrets.
And in the Imbolc ritual, they approach the Seed with a lot of respect and caution. They specifically ask the Side King to allow only those who come in peace to enter the sacred space. It's like they're acknowledging the potential danger of interacting with these beings.
Exactly. The side hair are not to be trifled with. They have their own rules and customs, and they can be both benevolent and dangerous depending on how they're treated.
So it's a bit like venturing into a wild forest. You need to be aware of your surroundings, respectful of the inhabitants, and prepared for the unexpected.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's this element of caution, but there's also a sense of reverence and even affection in the way they invoke the Seed King. It's like they're recognizing these beings as powerful allies, guardians of the natural world and keepers of ancient wisdom.
You've hit the nail on the head. The Siddhi represent the wildness and mystery of nature, those forces that are beyond our control, but that we can learn to work with and respect.
Right. And, it makes me wonder if the author of the memoir, even though he doesn't explicitly mention the city, might be sensing their presence in some of his experiences.
I was thinking the same thing. There are those moments where he talks about feeling like he's being watched in the wilderness or sensing a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Those could be interpreted as encounters with the city, couldn't they?
Totally. Especially that passage where he talks about hiking in the mountains and feeling like he stepped into a different reality, a place where the laws of nature seem to bend and shift. That's classic Siddhi territory.
It is. It's that liminal space, that blurring of the lines between the seen and the unseen that's so characteristic of their presence.
So how does this all tie back to the idea of cosmicism, that sense of the universe as vast and indifferent? It seems like the Siddhi, with their connection to the other world and their unpredictable nature, are almost a bridge between the intimate magic of the natural world and the awe-inspiring vastness of the cosmos.
That's a brilliant insight. The city embodies that sense of mystery and wonder that we find in both the natural world and the cosmos. They represent those forces that are beyond our comprehension, but that can nonetheless touch our lives in profound ways.
So it's a reminder that even in a world that's increasingly dominated by technology and scientific explanations, there's still room for magic, for mystery, for those glimpses of something beyond our ordinary perception.
I couldn't agree more. And what's really interesting is that both the Imbolc ritual and the author's memoir seem to be pointing toward a similar conclusion.
Oh, that's that.
That spiritual practice, regardless of the form it takes, is ultimately about cultivating a sense of awe and wonder, a willingness to be humbled by the mysteries of existence, and a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all things.
That makes perfect sense. Whether we're engaging in structured rituals, exploring our personal experiences, or simply paying attention to the magic that surrounds us every day, it's that sense of awe and wonder that fuels our connection to something larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this exploration of Druidism so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just about a set of beliefs or practices,
Right.
but about a way of being in the world, a way of seeing the interconnectedness of all things, and a way of honoring the mystery that lies at the heart of existence.
I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
Me too.
But we're nearing the end of our deep dive.
Right.
So I want to bring us back to the listener and the mission we set out with.
Okay.
What can we learn about the nature of spiritual practice by looking at these two seemingly different approaches?
Well, we've seen that spiritual practice isn't a one-size-fits-all proposition.
Right.
It can be structured and ritualistic, or it can be spontaneous and personal.
And it can involve connecting with specific deities and spirits, or it can be about finding the sacred in the everyday.
And what's really cool is that these different approaches aren't mutually exclusive.
So you can have both.
You can have both. You can participate in ancient rituals and also find moments of awe and wonder in your everyday life.
The key is to find what resonates with you, what speaks to your soul, and what helps you to connect with that sense of something larger than yourself.
Exactly. It's about being open to the mystery, trusting your intuition, and following your own unique path.
I love that. And, I think both the Imbolc ritual and the author's memoir offer us valuable insights into how to do just that.
They remind us that spiritual practice is about more than just dogma or belief systems. It's about cultivating a deep connection to the earth, honoring our ancestors, and being open to the possibility of encountering the numinous in unexpected ways.
And as I've seen, that sense of the numinous can be found in the grand scale of the cosmos, as well as in the intimate details of our everyday lives.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things, from the smallest grain of sand to the vast expanse of the universe. And it's about finding our place within that web of existence, honoring our role as co-creators of our own reality, and living in a way that promotes harmony and balance for ourselves and for all beings.
It's funny because when I first started reading these sources, I thought they were total opposites.
Yeah.
You've got this super structured ritual with all these specific rules and chants.
Right.
And then this memoir, which is all about personal, almost accidental encounters with the numinous.
Right.
But now I'm starting to see how they actually complement each other.
Yeah. I think that's a really important takeaway for anyone listening who might be exploring their own spirituality.
What do you mean?
Well, there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Right.
The important thing is to find what resonates with you, what helps you connect with that sense of awe and wonder, that feeling of being part of something larger than yourself.
Okay, so if someone's drawn to more structured rituals, that's cool.
Look.
And if someone's more into like spontaneous experiences in nature, that's cool too.
Absolutely. The key is to find what works for you, what speaks to your soul, and what helps you connect with that sense of something greater.
And, I think both the Imbolc ritual and the author's memoir give us some really valuable insights into how to do just that.
They do.
So let's talk about that idea of cosmicism again.
Okay.
It's that concept we keep coming back to.
Right.
This idea that the universe is vast and indifferent to our human concerns. It can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
They can be, for sure.
But you've really helped me to see how it can actually enhance our appreciation for life and our connection to the earth.
Well, it's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
But sometimes confronting those unsettling truths can lead to the most profound insights.
How so?
Well, think about it. If the universe truly is indifferent to our existence, it makes our little planet, our home, seem even more precious, even more miraculous.
Right. It's like suddenly all our problems and worries seem so small in comparison to the vastness of the cosmos.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that Druidism has to offer.
What do you mean?
It's not just about connecting with nature. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings, human and non-human alike.
So it's about understanding that we're all part of this intricate web of life.
Yes.
And that our actions have consequences that ripple out far beyond ourselves.
You got it. And I think that's where cosmicism can actually inspire a deeper sense of responsibility, a commitment to living in harmony with nature, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of all that is.
So it's not about despair or nihilism.
Not at all.
It's about finding meaning and purpose in our connection to this planet, to each other, and to the mystery of existence itself.
Beautifully said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening, as you go about your day, try to carry that sense of awe and wonder with you. Notice the beauty of the natural world. Appreciate the interconnectedness of all things. And remember that you are a part of something much larger than yourself.
And if you ever find yourself feeling lost or overwhelmed, just look up at the stars.
Good advice.
Remember that vast, indifferent universe and let it remind you of the preciousness of life, the importance of connection, and the incredible miracle of being alive in this moment.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.